The sky above Earth shimmered as a strange object broke through the atmosphere. It was no ordinary spacecraft. The sharp, metallic edges of the ship glowed in the sunlight, casting long shadows over the fields below. People looked up, confused and curious. Was this another satellite? A meteor? No one could have guessed what was inside. High above, within the cold steel walls of the ship, the Vora warrior women prepared for their mission. These were no ordinary aliens. They were fierce, proud, and had a reputation across the galaxy for being unstoppable in battle. Their muscles were strong, their reflexes sharp, and their minds focused. They had won countless wars, and now they were here on Earth for a reason, though not to fight a battle this time. Commander Ziria, the leader of the Vora, stood in front of her team with a smirk on her face. She was taller than any human, with blue-tinted skin that glistened under the ship's lights. Her piercing red eyes scanned her warriors, who were dressed in armor made from the toughest materials in the galaxy. Each of them was ready for action. Though today's mission wasn't about physical strength, it was about proving a point. Earth, Ziria said with a sneer, pacing back and forth in front of her crew. A planet filled with weaklings. They are small, slow, and fragile. They cannot even lift half the weight we can. And yet, some in the galaxy say they are to be respected. The warriors around her chuckled, amused by the thought. To them, humans were nothing more than a joke. They had heard stories of Earth's people, how they lived in peace, argued over politics, and spent their time on meaningless entertainment. There was no place for warriors like the Vora in a world like this. Humans could never understand true strength, Ziria believed. We will show them what true warriors look like, Ziria continued, her voice full of pride. We will make them understand that they are weak, and they will bow before the might of the Vora. The ship descended further, now hovering just above a green meadow near a small town. Ziria watched through the viewports as humans ran in fear, shouting and pointing at the giant ship. She smiled to herself. This was exactly what she expected. Fear, weakness. Prepare to land, she commanded, and the ship's engines hummed louder as it slowly touched the ground. The Vora women stood tall, their helmets in hand, ready to step out and face these fragile creatures. As the door of the ship slowly opened, a gust of wind blew across the meadow. Dust swirled in the air as the Vora warriors stepped out, their heavy boots sinking slightly into the soft earth. The humans nearby were frozen in place, staring at the towering aliens who now stood before them. Some ran, while others pulled out their phones to take pictures and videos, but none dared to approach. Ziria walked ahead of her team, her eyes scanning the humans. She could see the fear in their eyes, the way they trembled as they watched her and her warriors. She felt a sense of satisfaction. This was how it should be. The strong overpower the weak. It was the natural order of things. But Ziria's attention was soon caught by a small group of humans who weren't running. Among them stood a man, tall for a human, with broad shoulders and a calm expression. He didn't look scared. In fact, he seemed almost bored. His arms were crossed over his chest, and he raised an eyebrow as he looked directly at her. "Who is this fool?" Ziria muttered under her breath, her pride bruised by the lack of fear in his eyes. Most humans would have been on their knees by now, begging for mercy. But this one, he looked like he didn't even care. She motioned for two of her warriors to follow as she approached the man. The other humans backed away quickly, but this man stood his ground. His clothes were simple, just a plain t-shirt and jeans, and yet there was something about him that made Ziria feel uneasy. "You," Ziria said, her voice cold and commanding. "Do you not fear us? We are the Vora, the greatest warriors in the galaxy." The man looked up at her, unfazed by her intimidating presence. "Fear you? Should I?" he asked casually, as if he had just been asked about the weather. Ziria's eyes narrowed. This was not the reaction she expected. Every other human she had encountered had either run away or begged for mercy. But this one, he was different. "You should," she said, taking a step closer. We could destroy this entire planet if we wanted to. The man shrugged, as if the idea didn't bother him. Maybe. But you haven't yet, have you? Ziria was stunned. For the first time, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Doubt. This human, this Earthman, was not like the others. And for the first time, she wondered if perhaps she had underestimated the strength of humanity. Humans meet the aliens. The Vora ship, huge and metallic, sat in the middle of a green meadow. The air felt thick with tension as the people of Earth stared at the towering alien women who had just landed. While most of the humans ran away or watched from a distance, one man, John, stood still, his arms crossed, calmly observing the scene. Inside a nearby military base, alarms blared. The arrival of the Vora had not gone unnoticed. Soldiers rushed around, grabbing weapons and preparing for what could be an attack. Earth's leaders had known for a while that alien life existed, but they had never faced a threat like this. Panic spread through the base as they tried to figure out what to do. "What are those things?" a young soldier asked as he stared at the alien ship on the screen in front of him. "They look like women," another soldier muttered, confused by the sight of the tall, muscular alien figures, "but not like any women I've ever seen." General Harris, the man in charge, slammed his hand on the table. "It doesn't matter what they look like. They've invaded Earth, and we need to respond." "But, sir," a scientist interrupted, "they haven't attacked. Maybe they aren't here for war. We should try to communicate first." The general grumbled, not convinced. "All right. We'll send a team, but keep the weapons ready. If they make any sudden moves, we fire." A small group of soldiers was quickly put together. Among them was John, the man who had been watching the aliens from the meadow. Unlike the others, he didn't seem scared. In fact, he seemed more curious than anything. His laid-back attitude made the other soldiers nervous. "Why are you so calm?" one of the younger soldiers asked as they climbed into the military vehicle. John shrugged. "We don't know what they want yet. No point in panicking." The vehicle rumbled forward, bouncing over the uneven ground as it approached the alien ship. John and the other soldiers sat silently, the tension growing with every second. They could see the Vora warriors standing in front of the ship, their tall, muscular bodies glowing in the sunlight. They were intimidating, no doubt about that. As the vehicle stopped a few feet away from the aliens, John was the first to step out. The other soldiers hesitated, gripping their weapons tightly, but John simply walked forward, his hands by his sides, showing no fear. Commander Ziria watched him approach, her red eyes narrowing. She had been expecting more fear from the humans, but this man, he walked like he had nothing to worry about. She couldn't decide if he was brave or just foolish. John stopped a few steps away from the Vora warriors. He looked up at Commander Ziria, who towered over him, but didn't flinch. "Nice ship," John said casually, pointing back at the massive alien vessel. "I bet it goes pretty fast." Ziria raised an eyebrow. Was this man really trying to make small talk? She had come here to show the humans their place in the galaxy, and this one was acting like he didn't care. "You are not afraid of us?" Ziria asked, her voice cold and sharp. John shrugged. "Not really. Should I be?" Ziria's eyes flashed with anger. "We are the Vora, the most powerful warriors in the galaxy. We could crush your planet without breaking a sweat." John smiled. "Maybe. But you haven't done that yet, have you? So, what do you want?" The soldiers behind John tensed up, waiting for Ziria's response. They were ready for the worst, expecting the aliens to attack at any moment. But Ziria didn't attack. She simply stared at John, studying him. He wasn't like the other humans. Most would be shaking in fear by now, but not him. There was something different about this Earthman. "We are here to show you the truth," Ziria said, her voice filled with pride. "Humans are weak, and we are strong. The galaxy belongs to the strong." John scratched his chin, thinking for a moment. That's one way to look at it, I guess. But strength isn't everything. Ziria frowned. What do you mean? Well, John said, looking around at the other soldiers, strength is good, sure. But sometimes it's about being smart, or brave, or working together. You don't always have to be the biggest or the toughest to win. The Vora warriors exchanged confused glances. This human was saying things that didn't make sense to them. In their world, strength was everything. It was the only thing that mattered. But now, this Earth man was suggesting there was more to it than that. Before Ziria could respond, a loud voice crackled over the soldiers' radios. Fall back. I repeat, fall back. The generals are preparing to strike. John turned, his eyes widening in shock. What? No. Wait. The other soldiers quickly started retreating, but John stayed in place, looking between them and the Vora. If the military attacked now, it could start a war Earth couldn't win. Ziria watched the chaos unfold, her mind racing. This was her chance. She could crush the humans right here, right now. But something made her hesitate. Something about John's calmness, his strange courage, made her pause. For the first time, she wasn't sure what to do. The first challenge. The tension in the air was thick as the soldiers hurried back to their vehicles, preparing for a possible attack. John stood frozen, his mind racing. If the military fired on the Vora, it would lead to a war that humanity wasn't ready for. He had to do something, and fast. Commander Ziria watched the humans with a mix of amusement and frustration. These Earthlings were predictable, always rushing to use violence when they felt threatened. Her hand twitched near her weapon, but she didn't draw it. There was something about this moment that made her pause. John turned back to Ziria, his eyes pleading. Wait. There doesn't have to be a fight. What do you really want from us? Ziria narrowed her eyes. We want to prove our superiority. You humans are weak. We came here to show you what true power looks like. John fought quickly. He knew that if he didn't act soon, the situation would spiral out of control. Then, an idea sparked in his mind. The Vora respected strength, but what if they respected something else as well? What if he could outsmart them instead of fighting them? If it's power you want to prove, John said, stepping closer, then I challenge you to a test. The Vora warriors looked at each other in surprise, and Ziria raised an eyebrow. A test? You, a human, challenging me. Do you think you can defeat a Vora warrior? John smiled, trying to keep his nerves in check. Maybe, but let's make it fair. Not a fight, but a challenge of wits. You said you're here to show how strong you are, but strength isn't just about muscles. It's also about the mind. Ziria was intrigued. She had never been challenged in this way before. The Vora were used to proving their strength through combat, but this human was suggesting something different. Part of her wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but another part was curious. Could a human, who was physically weaker than her, possibly win a battle of wits? What kind of challenge? Ziria asked, folding her arms across her chest. John glanced around and saw a large stack of heavy crates near the alien ship. They were made of solid steel, and even the strongest humans would struggle to lift them. But John wasn't planning on lifting anything. He had a different idea. See those crates? John pointed. Let's see who can move one of them to the top of that hill over there, but without touching it with their hands or using any tools. Ziria's red eyes gleamed with interest. This was strange. How could anyone move something so heavy without touching it? She looked at the crate, then at the hill. The Vora warriors behind her murmured, wondering what this Earthling was up to. You think this is a test of wits? Ziria asked with a smirk. Very well. I accept your challenge, but when you fail, you will admit that humans are weak. John nodded, already forming a plan in his mind. Deal. But if I win, you'll have to admit that humans have their own kind of strength. Ziria grinned, confident that no human could outsmart her. She approached the crate, her muscles tensing as she prepared to figure out a way to move it. She stared at it for a few moments, thinking about how to complete the task. It seemed impossible, but the Vora didn't back down from challenges. She began circling the crate, looking for any angle or trick that might work. Meanwhile, John took a deep breath and scanned the area. He noticed something the aliens hadn't. Gravity wasn't just his enemy here, it could be his friend. The ground near the crate sloped slightly downward, and if he could just get the crate to start rolling, gravity would do the rest of the work. John bent down, looking closely at the base of the crate. The ground beneath it was covered in small rocks and dirt. He smiled to himself, seeing an opportunity. Without using his hands, he began kicking at the rocks and dirt around the crate, loosening the earth. Slowly but surely, the crate started to tilt. Ziria watched him, frowning in confusion. "What are you doing?" John grinned. "Just using what's already here." With one final kick, the crate shifted, and then, to everyone's surprise, it began to roll. Slowly at first, but then picking up speed as it made its way down the slight slope, heading straight toward the hill. The Vora warriors stared in shock, not expecting such a clever solution from a human. Ziria's eyes widened as she watched the crate roll past her. She had been trying to lift it or find a complex solution, but John had found the simplest, most effective way to move it without touching it. The crate rolled to the base of the hill and settled there. John wiped his hands on his pants and turned to Ziria with a satisfied smile. "Looks like I win." For a moment, Ziria said nothing. Her pride was hurt, and she didn't like losing. But deep down, she respected the cleverness of John's solution. It wasn't about brute strength. It was about thinking ahead and using the environment, something she hadn't considered. With a slow nod, Ziria admitted, "It seems I underestimated you, human. Perhaps there is more to your kind than I thought." John smiled, knowing that this small victory had changed something. He had proven that humans had their own kind of strength, and that strength wasn't always physical. This part introduces the first challenge between John and Ziria, highlighting John's cleverness and Ziria's shifting respect for human intelligence. It keeps the story engaging by focusing on a creative solution and building tension around the challenge. A surprising win. John stood proudly at the bottom of the hill, the crate resting there as proof of his victory. The Vora warriors, who had been watching with smug expressions, were now silent, their faces showing confusion. They had never seen a human outsmart one of their own. And yet, here was John, calm, collected, and victorious. Commander Ziria, though still standing tall, felt a flicker of frustration deep within her. The challenge was supposed to be easy. She had expected to crush the human with her superior strength and intelligence. But instead, this Earthman had turned the tables, showing that sometimes brains were just as important as brawn. "I didn't expect this," Ziria said, her voice steady but laced with disbelief. "You used your environment to win, something I had overlooked." John gave a humble shrug, though inside, he felt proud of what he had accomplished. "I just looked at the problem a little differently. Strength isn't everything, you know. Sometimes, it's about using what you have in the smartest way." The Vora warriors murmured among themselves, still shocked that one of their greatest commanders had been outsmarted by a human. They had come to Earth to prove their superiority, but this encounter had shaken their confidence. If one human could win in a challenge like this, what else were these Earthlings capable of? Ziria wasn't ready to give up. She couldn't let this victory go unanswered. The Vora needed to show their strength, or else their mission to dominate Earth would lose its power. She stepped forward, looking down at John with a new intensity. "One challenge doesn't decide everything," Ziria said firmly. "You may have won this round, but that doesn't make humans stronger than the Vora. We are warriors. We live and breathe combat. I challenge you again, this time, to a test of true strength." John frowned slightly. A test of strength. He wasn't the strongest man, not by a long shot. If the challenge involved physical power, there was no way he could win. but something told him he couldn't refuse. The fate of Earth could depend on how he handled this situation. "What kind of test are you talking about?" John asked cautiously. Ziria gestured toward the massive ship behind her. "There is a large beam inside our ship, one that even our strongest warriors struggle to lift. If you can lift it, I will concede that humans have strength. But if you fail, you will admit that your victory was a fluke." John's mind raced. He wasn't sure what to do. A physical challenge was exactly what he had wanted to avoid, but he couldn't back down now. If he refused, Ziria and her warriors would claim victory, and who knew what would happen next? Earth's survival could be on the line. "All right," John said after a moment. "I'll take your challenge. But remember, strength comes in many forms. I might surprise you again." Ziria led John and a few of her warriors into the ship. Inside, the alien technology glowed with an eerie light, and the air smelled metallic. The Vora ship was as impressive on the inside as it was on the outside, filled with advanced tools and machines that Earth hadn't even dreamed of yet. At the center of the ship was the beam Ziria had mentioned. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of John, made of some strange alien metal that seemed to shimmer in the dim light. John's heart sank a little. How was he supposed to lift something like that? The Vora warriors gathered around, waiting to see what the human would do. Some of them whispered, clearly doubting that he had any chance of success. After all, even the strongest Vora had struggled with the beam. How could a mere human even hope to lift it? John approached the beam, taking a deep breath. His hands hovered over the cold metal as he thought. There was no way he could lift it with brute force, but maybe, just like before, he didn't need to rely on strength alone. He glanced around the room, searching for something, anything, that might help him. And then he saw it, a set of metal rods lying in the corner and a few cables attached to the walls. An idea began to form in his mind. John quickly grabbed the rods and placed them under the beam, creating a sort of lever system. The Vora warriors watched, confused, as he tied the cables to the beam, wrapping them around a nearby machine for extra support. It wasn't going to be easy, but if he could use leverage and balance, he just might have a chance. Ziria folded her arms, watching silently. She had no idea what John was planning, but she was curious to see how it would play out. With a deep breath, John pushed down on the rods, using all his weight to lift the beam just a few inches off the ground. It wasn't much, but it was enough. He pulled on the cables, slowly raising the beam higher and higher. Sweat poured down his face as he struggled, but he kept going. His mind focused on one thing: winning this challenge. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the beam was lifted. It wasn't much, but it was off the ground, and that was enough to prove his point. The Vora warriors stared in shock. He had done it, not by brute force, but by outsmarting the challenge again. Ziria's eyes widened as she realized what had happened. John had won again, not by being stronger, but by being clever. She couldn't deny it any longer. Humans had a strength that wasn't physical. It was their intelligence, their ability to adapt and find solutions in unexpected ways. John wiped the sweat from his brow and looked at Ziria with a tired smile. "I told you, strength isn't everything." Commander Ziria's change. The atmosphere inside the Vora ship had shifted dramatically after John's surprising victory. The warriors stood in stunned silence, their previous confidence shattered. Commander Ziria, who had always prided herself on her superiority, felt an unfamiliar emotion creeping in: doubt. As she watched John, panting and sweating, with the massive beam now resting on the rods, something inside her began to change. This human had not only outsmarted her twice, he had done it with grace and cleverness. Ziria had spent her life training to be the strongest, yet here was John, showing her that strength came in many forms. "You should be proud," Ziria said, her voice steady but softer than usual. "You have proven yourself in ways I did not expect." John straightened, still catching his breath. "Thank you, Ziria. But it wasn't just me. Humans can think differently. We find solutions where others might see walls. Ziria nodded slowly, taking in his words. The concept of thinking differently was foreign to her. In Vora culture, strength and combat were everything. She had always believed that physical power was the only way to command respect. Now she was beginning to see that her beliefs might be limited. Perhaps I was wrong about humans, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. I have always seen you as weak, but maybe that is not the case. Maybe there is more to your kind. The Vora warriors shifted uncomfortably, glancing at one another. This was a strange moment for them. They had never heard their commander express doubt or uncertainty, especially about something as important as strength. Ziria was known for her fierce demeanor and unyielding beliefs. John, sensing the change in Ziria, decided to seize the moment. Strength doesn't have to mean overpowering others. It can mean lifting someone up or finding a way to solve problems without fighting. Ziria looked at him, intrigued. You really believe that? You think your kind is capable of more than just fighting? Absolutely, John replied, his eyes shining with passion. We fought our battles, but we've also learned to build, create, and help one another. It's not just about winning. It's about how we win and what we learn from it. As Ziria listened, she began to feel a strange respect for this human. He was not just a creature to be dominated. He was an individual with his own thoughts and ideas. This realization started to shift her perspective. Perhaps there was a chance for understanding and collaboration between their two species. Then tell me, Ziria said, her voice steadier, what do humans want from the Vora? Why should we not conquer your planet? John took a moment to gather his thoughts. This was a critical question. We want peace, he finally said. We want to learn from each other. Instead of seeing each other as enemies, we could become allies. Together, we could achieve so much more than either of us could alone. Ziria's mind raced with possibilities. She had never considered a future where Vora and humans could coexist. The idea was both exciting and terrifying. What would it mean for her people? What would it mean for her? You speak of cooperation, Ziria replied slowly. But how can we trust you? How can we be sure that your kind will not betray us when it suits you? John smiled gently. Trust takes time, but we can start with small steps. We can share our knowledge and culture. If we work together, we can build trust, and eventually we can create a partnership. Ziria pondered his words. It was a radical idea, one that could change everything for the Vora. If they were to forge a path of cooperation, it would require a complete shift in how they viewed humans. She had spent years believing that humans were beneath her, but now she was starting to see them as equals. Very well, Ziria said, her voice growing stronger. I will consider your words. But know this, if you betray my trust, I will not hesitate to take action against you and your kind. John nodded, understanding the weight of her words. I wouldn't expect anything less. Trust is built on honesty and respect, and I promise to show you that we are capable of both. As Ziria looked at John, she felt a new determination rising within her. Perhaps this was the start of something incredible, something that could change the fate of both their worlds. The Vora warriors watched the exchange with growing interest. They had witnessed a rare moment of vulnerability from their commander, and it made them reconsider their own views on humans. If Ziria could change, maybe they could too. Commander, do you truly believe that humans are our equals? One of the warriors finally asked, breaking the silence. Ziria turned to her warriors, her expression fierce, but now tinged with hope. I believe it is time we learn from them instead of merely conquering them. Strength is not always about dominance. It is also about understanding and respect. The warriors exchanged glances, their previous notions beginning to unravel. Perhaps this was a turning point, not just for Ziria, but for all of them. With a newfound sense of purpose, Ziria turned back to John. Let us begin this journey together. Show me what your kind is capable of. John felt a rush of excitement. This was more than he had hoped for. A new alliance was forming, one that could change the course of history for both humans and Vora. Together, they could build a future where both species could thrive, each learning from the other's strengths. As they left the ship, a sense of unity began to blossom between them. The road ahead would be challenging, but they were ready to face it together. This part highlights Zuria's transformation and the beginning of a potential alliance between humans and Vora, showcasing themes of understanding and collaboration. It maintains simplicity in language while ensuring that the narrative remains engaging. The final test. The sun hummed low in the sky, casting an orange glow over the Vora ship as John and Commander Zuria stood together. The air was charged with anticipation. After their conversation about trust and partnership, Zuria had proposed one last test for John. It was not just a measure of strength, it was a test of courage and character. "You have proven yourself in intelligence and resourcefulness," Zuria said, her voice firm yet encouraging. "But now, I want to see your true bravery. The final test will be a trial of your spirit." John nodded, feeling the weight of her words. "What do you have in mind?" Zuria gestured toward the forest that surrounded the landing site of the Vora ship. "We will go into the woods where we will face a creature known as the Gorthak. It is fierce and dangerous. If you can face this creature and return without harm, I will accept that you are worthy of our alliance." John felt a chill run down his spine. He had heard stories of the Gorthak, a massive beast known for its speed and strength. It was said to be nearly impossible to defeat, yet he knew that backing down was not an option. If he wanted to show the Vora that humans could stand strong alongside them, he had to take this challenge. "I accept your challenge," John said, trying to sound confident even though his heart raced. "But I'd like to propose a different approach. Instead of trying to defeat the Gorthak, what if we find a way to coexist?" Zuria raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his suggestion. "Coexist? You think you can tame a creature like the Gorthak?" A new understanding. The sun was setting over the Vora ship, casting long shadows across the clearing. John, Zuria, and the Gorthak stood together, the air thick with a sense of newfound connection. As the Gorthak licked its lips, still savoring the last remnants of the meat, Zuria turned to John, her eyes filled with respect. "You have shown great courage today," she said, her voice firm yet warm. "You faced the Gorthak not with violence but with understanding. It is a lesson I will not forget." John smiled, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. "Thank you, Zuria. I believe we can achieve so much more together if we embrace each other's strengths." Zuria nodded, her thoughts racing. "I can see now that humans have much to offer. Your ability to think differently is a strength, not a weakness." As they walked back to the ship, Zuria's warriors awaited them, their faces a mix of disbelief and admiration. They had seen John face the Gorthak, and many were still processing the sight of him standing confidently before the beast. "What did you learn?" one of the warriors asked, crossing her arms. John stepped forward, ready to share. "I learned that strength is not just about winning a fight. Sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to reach out and try to understand another creature, even one as fierce as the Gorthak." The warriors exchanged glances, clearly impressed. Zuria turned to her troops, her voice strong. "Let this be a lesson to us all. We must embrace new ideas and be willing to learn. The humans may not be what we thought." A warrior named Kellen spoke up, a hint of uncertainty in his tone. "But what if they betray us? How can we trust them?" Zuria faced Kellen, her gaze steady. "Trust takes time, and it must be earned. John has shown us that there is more to humanity than we realized. If we want to build an alliance, we must start with respect and open hearts." Kellen nodded slowly, though uncertainty lingered in his eyes. John sensed the hesitation among the Vora warriors. He decided to address it directly. "I understand your concerns. Trust is a two-way street. We humans want to build a future where both our species can thrive. If you give us a chance, I promise we will do everything to prove our worth." Zuria turned to John, pride swelling in her chest. You speak wisely. This is a pivotal moment for us. Together, we can change our worlds. As they continued discussing the future, John began to share stories about humanity, their achievements, their failures, and how they overcame challenges through teamwork. The Vora warriors listened intently, captivated by tales of bravery and innovation. Humans have fought against great odds, John explained. But they've also learned from those fights. We value cooperation and kindness. I believe we can share these values with the Vora. Ziria's expression softened. Perhaps we can also share our ways with you. The Vora are known for our combat skills and honor. We can teach you our techniques, and you can teach us your strategies for building peace. The idea sparked excitement among the warriors. Kellen stepped forward, his expression shifting from doubt to curiosity. You would share your combat techniques with us. Of course, Ziria replied. If we are to form an alliance, we must learn from each other. The skills of the Vora could help humans defend themselves in ways they never imagined. John's heart raced with excitement. And I can show you how humans solve problems creatively. Together, we can become stronger. As the night descended, they gathered around a small fire outside the ship. The atmosphere was warm and inviting. John felt a sense of belonging that he had never experienced before. This was more than just a meeting of species. It was the beginning of a friendship. Tell us more about your world, one of the Vora warriors urged. What is it like to live on Earth? John shared stories about Earth's diverse landscapes, from mountains to oceans, and the vibrant cultures that existed within its borders. He spoke of music, art, and the incredible creativity that humans possessed. With each tale, he saw the warriors' expressions shift from skepticism to genuine interest. As the fire crackled, Ziria leaned closer. You paint a beautiful picture of your world. I have always thought of humans as simple creatures, but now I see there is depth to your kind. And I see depth in the Vora, John replied. Your strength and honor are admirable. Together, we can create something incredible. As the fire burned low, Ziria's gaze turned serious. We must discuss the future. How can we formalize our alliance? John nodded, sensing the importance of the moment. We should set up a meeting to bring our leaders together. A council where humans and Vora can work together on plans for cooperation and peace. Ziria smiled, her eyes sparkling with determination. Yes, a council of unity. We will invite representatives from both our worlds to discuss our next steps. This is the beginning of a new era. The warriors cheered, their voices ringing out in the night. Excitement filled the air as they realized that they were part of something monumental. As the night deepened, John reflected on the journey that had brought him here. He had come to the Vora ship as an outsider, but now he was part of a team, forging a path toward a future filled with promise. Together, they would build a new understanding, one that could bridge the gap between humans and Vora, creating a partnership based on respect, trust, and shared goals. With hope in their hearts, they planned for the days ahead, ready to face whatever challenges lay in their path. They knew the road would not be easy, but they also knew that together, they were stronger.